Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kelsey and I'm here today for a Final Girl reading vlog. So one day in January, I was watching my comfort films, Scream. I decided there are plenty of books on Final Girls. What if I take this inspiration for one of my favorite movie franchises, the Scream movies, and read some books with some final girls. I know they exist, I know they're around. Let's see which one is the best one, which one gives me what I need and what I love in slasher movies. So before we start with introducing the books that I'll be reading for this vlog, let's talk about my love for Scream. What I love about Scream and what I'm hoping to find in these books are, I love the meta-ness. I love that it subverts itself within its own genre, and it basically paved the way for its own genre, but then also subverts the genre and subverts the movies within the following sequels. So I love that. I think that that's so creative. It's probably my favorite thing about Scream. I love that they reference different horror movies. I just love everything about that aspect, that Scream knows what it is. It knows it's part of a genre and then it's playing with that genre. I also really love Sidney Prescott as a character. I love the final girl. I love that she plays into the meta narrative. I love that she understands when she's in a scenario. I also really love the Carpenter sisters as we move into Scream 5 and Scream 6. And then I also love the more sillier characters that surround them, the stupidity but also grossness of the kills. How could these characters fall into these situations? They know that there are slasher people, they know that there are people coming to kill them, and they still end up in these wild scenarios. Those are all aspects of the slasher genre that I really love. So let's talk about the 3 different books I will be reading for this video, and they all have the same color scheme, much like my shirt, so we're really in the vibe today. The first book is The Last Final Girl by Stephen Graham Jones. This follows a young woman named Izzy who is in high school. She is a big fan of slasher films, and one day begins to notice that after the return of the final girl Lindsay, a girl who goes to her school, they are living in a slasher movie. After that, I read Final Girls by Riley Sager. This follows a young woman named Quincy Carpenter 10 years after the slashings of her friends. She now belongs to a group of final girls that she doesn't really want to belong to. Quincy wants to move on, start her baking business, be engaged to her boyfriend, and does not want anything to do with the kind of group of girls that she is a part of. Except one day, one of the final girls, Lisa, is found dead in her bathtub. And even though it is deemed a suicide, Quincy and the other final girl, Sam, work together to kind of solve this mystery. And then the last book I read for this vlog, and the book I just finished 5 seconds ago, is The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix. This also follows a group of final girls who used to come together monthly to have a support group and to talk about their problems, until one day one of the girls in this group is missing and Lynette's worst fear is realized. Someone knows about the group and is determined to ruin their lives piece by piece once more. So like I said, these are the books I will be reading for this vlog, and let's go back to Kelsey 1 week ago who read all of these books, and we'll see what my thoughts are. Hello, so update of this vlog. I think I'm going to start with The Last Final Girl by Stephen Graham Jones. I've never read from Stephen Graham Jones ever, I think. So I'm very, very, very excited to pick up his book. Out of the 2 other Final Girls books, this is definitely the shortest one, so I think I can probably knock it out pretty soon. Something that I know about Stephen Graham Jones is he's very meta with his books, and I have a feeling that this one will be sort of meta too. So one of the quotes is, "The Last Final Girl is like Quentin Tarantino's take on The Cabin in the Woods, bloody, absurd, and smart. Plus there's a killer in a Michael Jackson mask." Pretty interesting. Life in a slasher film is easy. You just have to know when to die. So in the Scream movies, the movie sort of acts like the characters know that they're in a slasher. And Billy's quote, for example, is on the front cover of this book, where it's movies don't create psychos, movies make psychos more creative. And that is directly from Scream 1. So I find that this is probably going to be meta, just because if Stephen Graham Jones is referencing Scream, referencing Billy, who is a character that this is a very exciting first book. I have the audio book for it on Everend, so I plan to start it now. Just really feel like this is gonna be meta. I'm very excited to read this, so let's get into it. Hello, I wanted to give an update about a third of the way in. I 66 pages just because this one's a pretty short one. But so far I'm really, really enjoying it, and it's definitely has the vibes of Scream, for sure. This is told very meta, as if you're reading sort of a movie script, and it's director's cues. So it says cut to this, move to this character's POV, this is what this character is seeing, which I think is a really interesting like writing technique. I don't think I've ever like read a technique such as this. So the book opens up with the final girl, the slasher scene, but then it moves into the characters at this high school in the aftermath once the final girl comes back to town. And the more main character that we tend to follow is this girl named Izzy and her friend Brittany. And they really remind me of Randy Meeks because a lot of what they talk about is like living in a horror film and seeing the world from this like horror film perspective. So I'm really enjoying this. I have like almost nothing bad to say at all. So I'm going to continue listening to it before I head to sleep and probably update you when I'm another like 60 to 100 pages in. Hello, I am currently on lunch. I didn't read much from when I updated you last night. Took a very chill morning, just had a bunch of meetings, so it was a lot of listening and engaging with my brain. And now I'm going to relax, jump into the last final girl because I am really enjoying it. I'm really loving the meta stuff. It's written to feel like you're watching a movie, but a movie that knows what it's doing and commenting on the horror genre, as I mentioned last night, with like these characters in the book being sort of like Randy Meeks in the Scream movies. Given that Stephen Graham Jones put the Billy quote on the front cover, given that this is very meta, this is definitely like reminiscent of Scream for sure. The mass slasher attacking high school students, this whole vibe is very reminiscent of the Scream movies, obviously, or any slasher movie really of this genre. I don't even think I've updated on the plot. So basically there was this character named Lindsay, and Lindsay is like this good virgin girl, obviously. So she survives at the end of the slasher event. But in reality, what we're following in these books is two characters named Izzy and Brittany, and they are sort of the like degenerate characters. Like they're the bad girls. They're interested in horror. I don't know, they read to me sort of like emo, I guess. So obviously they're the problem children of the movie, and they are currently being hunted by another character that has a Michael Jackson mask, and that is the mask that was used by the killer in the first scene, of which Lindsay survives. So that's where we are in regards to like the plot, but I don't feel like the plot is really what matters in this book. But I'm going to continue anyways, and I'll let you know if I have anything else to say. I made pickled onions. I was just giving my thoughts for Final Girls, which you'll see after this, before I realized that I never gave my final thoughts for The Last Final Girl by Stephen Graham Jones. So if you love slasher movies, then this is definitely a book that I can see you enjoying. It's satirical and it pokes fun at the slasher genre, very Scream-esque, as I mentioned several times throughout the vlog clips. There are a lot of nods and Easter eggs to different slasher movies. And basically, if you feel like Randy Meeks from Scream a lot of the time, you're gonna want to pick this up. I found myself really laughing at some of the overused tropes that Jones included within this book and how he was using it for really comedic purposes, and the book overall just felt extremely self-aware, which I really enjoyed. And it made it really fun to read because the book is written in like a sort of screenplay format, and Jones was really taking a risk with that, which I think what worked out, because while I did enjoy the aspect in the beginning, I found it to be really tiresome towards the middle and ending portions of the novel, just because I was starting to find it really confusing to keep up with what was happening in the book. I found myself struggling to understand the more smaller aspects of the plot, despite understanding the much larger overall plot. But this book is a cheesy good time, and if you can move past the more confusing elements of the writing style, I think you have a lot of fun. I gave this 3.5 stars, and I would recommend it if you're looking for like a typical slasher Final Girl book. And I will move into those thoughts on Final Girls by Riley Sager. Hello, so I wasn't able to update you all day because I was editing my Rebecca Verity vlog, which should go up before this one. But since it was extracting, I did get 50 pages into Final Girls while watching the Habs game in the background. So if you hear that, I need to leave the door open because I absolutely cannot be reading about murderous Final Girl cabin in the woods situations and not be afraid, you know? So I need to have the door open so I can see the hallway and be prepared for anything that happens, and also ignore my pimple patch. I don't know what's happening to my face, but we're just gonna pretend it's not happening. So the next book I'm reading in this vlog, as mentioned, is Final Girls by Riley Sager. I've never read from Riley Sager before. This is my first experience with him. He's an extremely popular thriller writer that I've just never like read from before, and I always knew that I wanted to start with Final Girls if I was ever going to touch upon Riley Sager, just because as we see from this video, I love the final girls trope. I love slashers. So this follows a girl named Quincy Carpenter who was a final girl in a massacre that occurred at a cabin in the woods that she went with her friends. And she was the only survivor. Since then, she has spoken to 2 other final girls that have survived these other massacres. But then one night, one of the girls, Lisa, or rather they're women now. So one of the women, Lisa, is found dead in her bathtub. And then Samantha, who is the other girl that survived a massacre as well, appears on Quincy's doorstep intent on making Quincy relive the past. And when new details about Lisa's death come to light, Quincy's life becomes a race against time as she tries to unravel Sam's truth from her lies and remember what really happened at Pine Cottage before what was started 10 years ago is finished. So I just got to the part in the novel where Sam has shown up to Quincy's door. So nothing like really crazy has happened yet. And we've only had one chapter that dives into the night that Quincy survived the cottage massacre. This is reading like a thriller. This is reading like a movie. I feel like I could really visualize what is occurring, but it is definitely like a beginning of a movie vibe for sure. So I'm going to continue this. I'll probably update you when I'm like another 100 pages in, because like I said, there's nothing really so far that I can talk about. I feel like this is a lot easier to read than The Last Final Girl by Stephen Graham Jones, just in regards to like the format. This is just reading like a typical thriller. So I'm going to go back to reading this while watching the Habs game, and you will probably see me tomorrow. Actually, because I'm feeling a little scared reading Final Girls, because I'm home alone, I think I'm just going to start my continuation of the Wheel of Time series with the 7th book, The Crown of Swords, just because I know that this will give me comfort. It doesn't scare me. I'm very comfortable with the characters. I know what's going on. So I think I'm just gonna continue this unrelated to this vlog. I'm just gonna save reading Final Girls because it is a pretty quick read. I read 50 pages in like half an hour. I'm gonna save this for tomorrow in the daytime. Oh, yes. Hello, so I'm coming to update a bit late in the day. Ugh, this pimple, I have to go put on another pimple patch after my shower, but I've just been feeling so sick today. I got a visit from my monthly visitor we love. So I've been feeling really nauseous and just like working from the couch today. And I haven't been doing any reading all morning at all because I've just been like resting. But I think I'm finally feeling a bit better. I'm sitting up now to continue with the read of Final Girls. So I haven't read since I updated you last, so I'm still on page 50 and I plan to make a dent in this now. So I'll probably come to you later with an update. Hello, so am I currently in the same spot I was yesterday? Yes. Am I wearing the same sweater that I was yesterday? Also yes. Mind your business, I'm sick. So I wanted to talk about how I got to page 130 something yesterday, and the story is really picking up. I think it's really interesting. So right now we have our main character and she has connected with the other final girl, Samantha, after the death of the 3rd final girl. And we are meant to, I think, be suspicious of Samantha, but Quincy is very trusting of her because she understands exactly what Samantha went through. Obviously, nobody else in the entire United States of America understands what these 3 girls have gone through, and now they've lost the only other person in the world that understood them. And it's being interspaced with chapters from the night that Quincy experienced at the Pine Cottage. I'm really, really enjoying those chapters. I think that it makes for this very atmospheric and movie sort of visualization in your head. Imagery. And I'm really, really liking those chapters. The chapters of Quincy in the present are interesting, and you definitely see how things are not what they seem. I'm definitely suspicious of Samantha, but I have a feeling that Samantha's sort of a red herring and someone that we are not suspecting will be the person that committed the murders the night that Quincy was at the chalet. Chalet is the French version, the French word for cabin or cottage or whatever. So the night of these cabin murders. In the cabin murder timeline, we are seeing how one of Quincy's friends, Janelle, invited this stranger to come to the cabin and like spend time with them because he's of relatively the same age and he was looking for someone to help him because his car broke down, for example. We know that this Joe figure is, I think, the man that was committed, or the man who essentially died because he died that night, of committing these murders. But I also think he's a red herring. Given what I know with Riley Sager and the like
hold he has on the thriller community. I don't think it's going to be that simple. I don't think Sam is involved in any sort of way with anything that's currently happening in the present timeline. And I don't think that I think that Joe is a red herring for the cottage chalet timeline, and we're going to find out that Joe wasn't actually the one that committed the murders, because obviously Quincy has a very typical, I think, trope being used where she has amnesia and she doesn't really remember anything. So that's suspicious to me. I think we're going to really start to understand what's happening, especially because the main players in the present timeline are coming together. So we have Quincy, we have Sam, we have Quincy's boyfriend Jeff, who I'm suspicious of him, but I also feel like he's a red herring. And then we have Coop, who is the police officer that found Quincy at the cottage. I don't know his role right now. He was definitely there patrolling a random chalet, which is a bit weird, but we kind of, I think, are meant to believe that this area would have been patrolled because people had already died or were murdered previously in this forest. And I'm also like a little suspicious of Quincy, not gonna lie, because why does she have memory loss? I'm really like intrigued by the story going on overall, but definitely more intrigued by the cottage plotline, just because I feel like it's the most like horrific part, and I definitely see it as more of like a movie than the present one. And it's sort of reminding me of like a mix of Screams 1, 2, and 3, with like the college, the original murder, the like trying to shape your life and putting that in the past and trying to be normal, which we do see Sidney Prescott experience in the Scream movies. So far, really interesting. I'm going to continue reading on my lunch break, and then we'll see what happens. Hello, we are currently in the same position again. The pimple patch is off because I went to the gym, healthy bitch era, but I did manage to read another 100 pages today while doing some things around the house. I have to say that I am still really, really enjoying this, but I don't know how to vlog thrillers. Also, sorry for the light. The sun is setting around here. So Quincy is discovering that she can't really trust Samantha because she goes to visit their old friend Lisa's place, and she discovers that there were folders there, and she has a feeling that Samantha was there looking through the folders as well. And also Samantha is not really revealing a lot of things to Quincy about where she comes from, where she's been, that sort of thing. I'm very curious if Samantha is Samantha. I'm starting to wonder if that's the case, because we start off the book with Lisa's like unaliving herself, and they talk a lot about how Lisa wouldn't do that, that's not about her, and we find out that that's fake, right? We find out that something happened to Lisa that makes the unaliving of herself out of character. And a lot of what they talk about in the book is that Samantha always went into hiding, was never wanted to be found, never wanted to talk with the media, and all of a sudden Samantha's here. And now I'm wondering, like, well, that is very out of character of Samantha. So if these two women have done something that's very out of character, they have to be linked. So now I'm like, is Samantha the red herring? I still think so. I don't think Samantha is Samantha, but I also don't think that Samantha is the one that killed Lisa either. Because I just feel like them three do have this sort of connection. They constantly talk about this connection that they've had about being final girls. So I don't think that that would have happened. Like, I don't think Samantha is the murderer, but I also don't think Samantha is Samantha. But I also think Samantha is a red herring. I don't know how to talk about thrillers without sounding so confusing, because I obviously don't want to spoil a lot of things. We're getting into the last 100 pages of the book, so I'll probably just update you when I'm done the book as well, and we'll see where my thoughts lie with this book. Sorry again for the lighting in this next clip and the clip before. I don't know what was happening. I don't see it on my phone when I'm recording, so it's like hard to predict these things, so I just apologize if the lighting like bothers you. Hello, so we're here to go over my final thoughts for Final Girls by Riley Sager. Overall, I really ended up enjoying my first Riley Sager novel, and I feel like I liked this as much as I would like any typical slasher movie. I see why Sager is really allotted as someone crucial in the thriller genre, because I really didn't expect this ending. I think he did an excellent job with like the twists in the book. There were a lot of red herrings that I was able to pick up on, and I'm really proud of myself, but the overall like solution to the mystery was shocking to me. I really enjoyed our main characters, Quincy and Sam. I found them to be really interesting, and I really enjoyed how we dived into their like psyche a little bit about being final girls. And as mentioned in this vlog, I really enjoyed the like interspersed chapters from the cottage, because they were probably like the most interesting aspects of the book, and they really helped us understand Quincy as a main character. However, I did have issues with how the like overall plot was plotted. Quincy having like a repressed memory for the majority of this novel just felt like a cop-out. It felt like Riley Sager just wanted to keep everything on the DL until he could reveal it at the end, which given that this was Riley Sager's debut, I will forgive. But I just feel like the reveals at the end were like a little too wild. Like there was no way for us to like pick up on that. And I just felt like it really came out of nowhere for the characters. So I ended up settling on a 3.5 stars. Like I said, this was just enjoyable as any like typical slasher movie would be enjoyable to watch. It wasn't doing anything like really meta like The Last Final Girl by Stephen Graham Jones. It wasn't doing anything different or special. It was just a very enjoyable, typical slasher book. And now we're going to move into the final girl book, The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix. I really enjoy Grady Hendrix. So far I've read 2 horror books from him and I really enjoyed his like campiness. So I'm expecting to enjoy this as well. I don't expect to hate this at all. But let's find out what this is about. I think this is going to be more meta, much like The Last Final Girl by Stephen Graham Jones, just because Grady Hendrix is that campy and he does sort of like pull from 80s tropes and movie tropes and plays with them. So I just expect it to be more meta than Riley Sager's book. In horror movies, the final girls are the ones left standing when the credits roll. They made it through the worst night of their lives, but what happens after? Grady Hendrix' fast-paced and wickedly humorous thriller, The Final Girl Support Group, pays tribute to and slyly subverts our most popular horror films. Movies like The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, A Nightmare on Elm Street, and Scream. Lynette is a real-life final girl who survived a massacre. For more than a decade, she's been meeting with 5 other final girls and their therapists in a support group for those who endured the unthinkable, working to put their lives back together. Then one woman misses a meeting, and Lynette's worst fears are realized. Someone knows about the group and is determined to rip their lives apart again, piece by piece. And not to go too much into spoilers, but that really relates to Riley Sager's book as well. I'm very excited. This is probably the one I'm the most excited to read just because I love Grady Hendrix the most out of all of these authors. He's the only one that I'm far more comfortable with. Definitely diving in now. I haven't read anything since I woke up this morning, but I will get to it now. Hello, so I wanted to update like at the 50-page mark, but I'm now on page like 100 something because I'm absolutely loving this, absolutely flying through it. I had so much to say yesterday that like now I'm completely blanking because I went to bed. And I don't know if other people feel this way, but I don't know why I think I'm like a mastermind and that I could remember things when I don't. And I'm in my 30s, you know, like the brain is not braining all the time. So I don't know who I think I am. I really enjoy what Grady Hendrix is doing with this book. It's more similar to The Last Final Girl by Stephen Graham Jones, where there are final girls and they have survived these horrific tragedies. Whereas like in Final Girls by Riley Sager, that is like one of the tragedies that has occurred, right? So in here, they're looking past that. They're looking at their lives like these horror movies. And something similar that's also done with The Last Final Girl with Scream as well is that these movies are being made of their lives, and that often threatens them because people become fascinated with them. Obviously, we see that in Scream as well. Like people become fascinated with Sidney Prescott and the idea of the Scream murders, and then within Scream 5 and 6 we see that as well. Like they're fascinated by the stab movies, which are based off of Scream and thus Sidney Prescott's life. So I think that this book is doing a really good job. Like they are a part of a support group, and they often talk about how women are experiencing violence more often, and final girls exist because violence is done upon these women. One of the characters in here is a therapist, their therapist, the therapist that runs the Final Girl Support Group, I guess, and how her specialization is with violence against women. And here we also see how traumatizing being a final girl surviving this tragedy could be. With Final Girls by Riley Sager, Quincy was an interesting character because she kind of hid away her trauma, which is, I guess, in a sense, its own sort of like trauma adjusting. And here, our main character, Lynette, is severely traumatized by what happened to her, and she is very careful about who she looks at, who's looking at her, constantly looking at people's shoes to know who's following her, has different routes to get home, has like a cage installed in her house to like keep people in if they enter the house. So I think that Lynette, in my mind, feels more realistic, just this constant state of paranoia. The final girls that are within this group are being targeted one by one. We just got to a part in the novel where it seems to be that it might be Lynette's fault, which is really interesting because she is probably the most paranoid out of everybody in the group. So I'm really interested to see like where that goes and how that furthers the plot. I'm enjoying, much like with Stephen Graham Jones's book, is utilizing the slasher genre, utilizing the final girl trope into making something interesting work with the format of the book. So interspersed within the book, there are these like different pulled text. So we have like chat groups, we have like articles, movie reviews about their movies, articles with the girls and the interviews that they've done, for example, essays that have been done on their lives and how this was translated into film. Very interesting stuff. Like, it's not fully developed, like they're always like a paragraph or two, but I'm really enjoying that. And then I started to notice that the chapters are playing on this like genre of horror film, right? So the first chapter is like the Final Girl Support Group, then the second chapter is the Final Girl Support Group 2, and then the third chapter is the Final Girl Support Group 3D, because they always have a 3D version. I really like what Grady Hendrix is doing there, where every chapter he's like being clever. There's a lot of elements of this book that are like cleverly looking at the genre of Final Girl, of slasher in movies, while also telling its own version of a Final Girl story. So I'll probably update you at the 200-page mark and see where we're at by then. Hello, so this is my first update of today, just because I was feeling incredibly sick. I'm feeling so much better. I don't know what the heck was up with me for the entire day, but the good thing is that I'm feeling a lot better because I'm doing reading sprints on my channel with Hanani for our Rick Riordan read along that we do every month. We are now in the Trial of Apollo series, so if you want to tune into that, those will be live on my channel. I also have an entire playlist with Rick Riordan's books in it. So I will be starting this book later tonight, which means I do want to give an update for the Final Girl Support Group because I'm almost finished it. So before I start the vlog for this, I just want to get like into my thoughts before the end. So right now I'm still in the camp of absolutely loving it. I really love where this story is going. I think it's taking such an interesting turn, and I'm really liking where it's going, the reveals that are being happened, and our main character Lynette as a character. We just also got introduced to the like more recent final girl, which is Stephanie, and I really enjoy her character too. Like, she's just a teenager that's like along for the ride, and I really like her. So I'm very much enjoying where this story is going, and I think it's like the most interesting plot, at least out of the 3 that I read for this vlog. I don't want to get too much into details just because this isn't a spoiler filled vlog, and I'm very bad at keeping things spoiler free. However, I was reading a lot of the like Goodreads reviews, and a lot of them are like the twist, and I don't know if I got to the twist yet, because there was a revelation that happened, or I don't know how to word this, like a revelation in Lynette's mind, or Lynette came up with a revelation that happened, and I don't know if it's like 100% true. Is it part of the twist? Is it a red herring? So I'm definitely very excited to see like what the perhaps real twist is, if that is the twist. I feel like I overhyped it in my mind a little too much. So I'm hoping there's another one, just so that I don't end this book like feeling a little disappointed that I didn't get to like a major twist. But I really love Grady Hendrix. I think he's a really funny writer. There's a lot of things in here that just make me chuckle while I'm reading. So I'm going to go continue this, and the next time you'll see me is when I finish this book.
The next day.
Okay, I just got to the twist.
1 minute, 37 seconds later.
Okay, wait. I think I got to the real twist.
So now that we're at the end of the vlog, let's talk about my final thoughts for the Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix, which I don't think is any surprise that I really like this one. I'm a big fan of Grady Hendrix. I've read 2 books from him before, so I knew going in that I was probably going to enjoy this book, considering I hadn't read the other authors before. The humor here was really funny, and I found myself like chuckling out loud when other characters would interact with Lynette. I just think Grady Hendrix has a knack for being funny and for playing into this like campy narrative. A lot of Scream as well is really funny and does make me laugh out loud despite the fact that people are dying. So I think that Grady Hendrix really nailed that on the head. He didn't take it as seriously as I think like Riley Sager did, for example. A lot of the reviews, when I was looking to try to like formulate my thoughts, mentioned that Lynette's perspective was really boring, particularly in the beginning. And I think I kind of agree with that. However, when you get into the last 2/3 of the novel, I found her like paranoia and chaotic thinking to be really engaging and kept me reading with the book. I never knew what was going to happen, because it's like, is Lynette paranoid? Is this a real fear that she should have? Eventually, as you guys saw, I thought that I had figured out the twist based on like how Lynette was acting, what was she saying, what was she doing? And I was so shocked by how this ended. There's not one, but 2 twists in here. And I just really loved how Hendrix was able to tie everything together in a way that made sense for the two twists and shine a light on the book's overall theme. Something I don't think I mentioned really in the clips, but I always thought to myself that I wanted to mention and I just kept forgetting. But I really love the overall theme of like violence against women. There were definitely some elements that I found to be like a little cringy when it came to like his female empowerment sort of like narrative that he was pushing forth. But I was happy to read a book that really discussed the violence against women and also touched upon the aspects of slasher movies and of horror movies where it's often a woman that is being attacked or multiple women that are being attacked, and they are the sort of ones that make it to the end because they are this like virginal, beautiful figure. So I really liked that Grady Hendrix discussed that. I think all the books discuss that, but this one I think was the most effectively done. However, I do want to mention that the only black final girl within this book is the first one to be killed. And whether this is Hendrix's own sort of commentary of that trope, I don't think it landed very well with me, which is why I ended up lowering my rating a bit, because this would have been a 5 stars, but when I really thought about that, I had to lower it. I didn't know what was the intent or purpose of that, so I ended up giving this 4 stars. Still really enjoyed it, but that is something that I do want to mention in case you're picking this book up. But I think this one was the most effective with all the tropes. It was funny, it had the meta commentary. As mentioned, there were like different aspects of the book that showed that these girls are from movies, or that their stories were then used into movies, which is what happens within the Scream movies as well. They take on this trope. The violence against women, discussing women in horror, I think this just did it the best. So it's the one I would definitely recommend out of the 3 in this video. So let's just do a short wrap up of the books that I read. So the first one, The Last Final Girl by Stephen Graham Jones, I ended up giving this a 3.5 stars. Still really enjoyable. Just was a little bit confusing for me with the overall meta narrative. After that, we read Final Girls by Riley Sager. I think I also gave this a 3.5 star. This was more enjoyable in regards to like the overall story and the plotting. I think the twists were really done in here. And then finally, my favorite one, The Final Girl Support Group, which I ended up giving a 4 stars. Definitely the one that took on the narrative and took on the elements of Scream that I love in a new and refreshing way. And that's it. Those are all of the books I read for this vlog. If you've read any of these books, please let me know down below what you thought about them. Did you read all 3? Which one is your favorite Final Girl book? Which is the final book of the Final Girls? If you would like to follow me on my reading journey or any of the books I would like to read in the future, I always leave a link down below to my Twitter, Goodreads, and Instagram if you would like to follow me there. And of course, because it is the end of the video, please do not forget to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell. It does wonders for my channel. It makes me feel really good. And that's it. I never know how to end these things, so I will see you next time. Bye!